After the brutal conflict known as the Civil War, the world thought capitalism and the idea of democracy was a failed experiment. But alas, America started rebuilding and started to become the fastest growing country in the world. It had its ups and downs and small recessions and stock market woes, but a few titans of industry, going by the creed, with big risk comes big reward. These giants ensure America's rise to the top. One such titan is Andrew Carnegie, the man whose legacy began connecting east to west by building the first bridge across the Mississippi River at St. Louis. This bridge was built on steel, the first time steel was produced in large quantities for such a large project. The bridge became a success, and thus Carnegie Steel is born. But Carnegie's ambition could be his undoing if he makes the wrong business decisions or hires the wrong men. It's the late 1800s, and America is being built on Carnegie Steel. Carnegie Steel is growing exponentially, and Carnegie needs the right type of businessman to keep it going efficiently. Andrew Carnegie hires a new man to run his business. He hires Henry Frick, a ruthless businessman who made his millions in the coal industry. Now Frick has become chairman of Carnegie Steel. His ruthlessness brings more efficiency to the making of steel, and he lowers costs by reducing wages and increasing working hours. This hiring of Frick looks like a boon for Carnegie, but it became the worst business decision of Carnegie's life. Carnegie turns Frick loose, and Frick quickly burns bridges and directly pulls the plug on the South Fork Dam, literally, due to his negligence. Frick had bought land on South Fork Lake, a huge man-made lake held by the biggest dam of its kind in the world, and the responsibility of this dam's upkeep was the South Fork Hunting and Fishing Club. After Henry Frick was made chairman of Carnegie Steel, he bought land and a clubhouse on South Fork Lake, and Frick was to maintain the working condition of the dam that held this lake. But one day, Frick's carriage was too wide to cross the dam, so Frick forces workers to widen the dam. The major issue was, to widen the dam, it had to be lowered. The lowering of the dam doomed the town of Johnstown, a town of steel mill workers and their families. They constantly lived under the shadow of the South Fork Dam, hoping it would never fail, for if it does, it would bring about Johnstown's doom. Then, unfortunately, it started raining one day. The South Fork Lake was rising 1 inch every 10 minutes. Workers did their best trying to shore up the dam with sandbags, but to no avail. A telegraph was sent to Johnstown. Evacuate, dam is going to break. But the telegraph office ignores the message because they have received such messages before. Soon, the dam does break due to Frick's negligence in keeping the dam serviced. The aftermath of the flood had left 2,000 people dead, 1 in 3 so mutilated that they could not be identified. 4 square miles of Johnstown was annihilated by floodwaters. It's the worst man-made disaster in America prior to 9/11. Bodies will be found for years, some as far away as Cincinnati, 350 miles away from Johnstown. This was the first effort of the American Red Cross in peacetime to help people. The South Fork Hunting and Fishing Club was to blame, but the South Fork Club openly denies it was their fault. Carnegie drops out of the club, and Carnegie donates millions to help people of Johnstown and more. He builds more buildings for public use, especially libraries. And then Carnegie builds a music venue in Manhattan for everyone to enjoy the performing arts. This building is known as Carnegie Hall. But due to Carnegie turning Frick loose, Carnegie's Homestead Steel Plant has had enough of the long 12-hour days and lower wages, for these conditions have caused quite a few deaths due to tiredness and overwork. As a strike takes over, Frick takes it personal, and soon 2,000 workers stand at the entrance to block anyone from coming into the steel plant, for these men think this plant is theirs. Frick, in his ruthless nature, brought in the Pinkerton Detective Agency basically guns for hire. The Pinkerton Detective Agency gets pummeled with rocks, which in turn causes the Pinkertons to open fire on the workers. Most of the workers were shot in the back as they run. The ruthlessness of the Pinkertons was hand in hand with Frick's, and it was abominable on that day. The Pinkertons end up killing 9 Carnegie Steel workers and injuring untold others. The Pennsylvania governor had to send in state militia to bring about order. The public was outraged. They blamed Henry Frick, wanting justice for the slain. The growth of America at this pace brings about problems, and this massacre had brought matters to a head. Though Frick gains the Homestead plant back, it becomes a symbol of the issues with how the normal worker was being treated in America. A new group called the Anarchists had formed, and they had their eyes on retribution against Henry Frick, public enemy number 1. They send in a man to assassinate Frick, but the man shoots Frick in the neck, only grazing him. Then Frick overtakes the man hand to hand, beating the brakes off the man until he is pulled off of him by others outside of Frick's office. Frick has now put Carnegie's empire in peril. Frick has become a liability to Andrew Carnegie, and Frick refuses to take responsibility for his actions. He even tries a hostile takeover of Carnegie Steel. But Carnegie has a new outside threat also, J.P. Morgan, who buys and reorganizes failing businesses. To save his business, Carnegie makes a bold move, having the board oust Henry Frick, the major liability to Carnegie Steel. The nation is starting to think the titans of industry have become monsters. For years, Carnegie fought the other titans, especially John D. Rockefeller, for title of the richest man in the U.S. Carnegie starts to question his legacy, though, and when he is asked indirectly by J.P. Morgan what his price was to buy out Carnegie Steel, Carnegie actually had an answer: $480 million, over $400 billion today. Astonishingly, J.P. Morgan accepts that price. When all is said and done, Andrew Carnegie becomes the richest man in the U.S. at that time. His worth is over $300 million then, somewhere around $300 billion today. He was eventually bested by John D. Rockefeller, but these titans made millions, but also gave millions to help create what we call the American dream. On the backs of these titans, America was to become one of the most powerful nations in the world.
Well, there you go, guys. We hope you enjoyed this new little segment that we're gonna kind of pursue. Be sure to do the YouTube things, like, sub, noti bell, all that jazz, and yeah, definitely helps us out. So until next time.